Yeah, so vCluster is an open source project. It's Apache 2 licensed. You find it on GitHub. So if you're creating virtual clusters, the core technology, everything's open source. We support multiple Kubernetes distros, all in the open source. So the control plane can be K3s based, K0s based. It can run obviously with vanilla Kubernetes with etcd. It can also run EKS. The EKS team actually contributed this, which was really exciting to see. I think they saw these other distros and they're like, oh, we got to put EKS in there as well, right? And then, when you want to run a lot of virtual clusters and you want to run them in a very secure fashion, right? And you want to enforce certain standards across these virtual clusters. That's where our commercial product comes in.
Okay.
We call it vCluster Pro. So for example, one thing that vCluster Pro does, it packages, so to make cluster internal DNS in a vCluster work, we have a separate pod that runs core DNS deployed alongside each vCluster. And obviously that's a second thing to manage, a second container that takes up resources, right? What we do in the Pro distro is we package core DNS into the vCluster pod and build it as one container. We're also using chain guards, like secure base images for this, for example. And it just has a couple of these security and performance enhancements. One thing is also, if you have vCluster open source, you typically run the vCluster control plane and the pods that get synced down in the same namespace, right, of the real cluster. In Pro, you have the option to run what we call that feature isolated control plane. That means you can run your control planes in one cluster, but sync workloads to other clusters.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, and that
sounds really handy.
Yeah. That opens up, for example, CoreWeave is using this. Like, they build a GPU cloud. We gave a talk with them yesterday. They're very open about how they're using this internally. And what they do, obviously they sell Kubernetes and GPUs to these like AI companies and folks that need GPUs, right? And for them, they obviously have SLAs on provisioning Kubernetes, on that control plane uptime, right? So security and stability and isolating that is really important for them. So they're really big, like vCluster Pro user, very vocal about it. And it's those kind of scenarios where vCluster Pro really makes a ton of sense for folks.
Yeah, I like how you built that differentiated value on top of the open source code. And it sounds like folks are using the open source code independently. It's kind of that best of both worlds kind of place.
Yeah. And it's a seamless transition as well.
You mentioned in passing using ChainGuard. And so is that part of the value of the Pro product as you get this the supply chain validation?
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. We're trying to obviously make vCluster in the open source as secure as possible, right? But in Pro, there's an even additional level of like scrutiny in terms of like, we know, some companies rely on this in production at a pretty large scale. They run like 300, 500, or even 1,000 vClusters. And, obviously if you have any kind of CVE or things that would pop up, it's very critical for them to also have a good way of rolling it out. So one of the things that we ship in vCluster Pro 2 is a controller for vClusters and a CRD to manage these vClusters. And it's a cross-cluster controller. So you have a central place where you can create these virtual clusters and manage their lifecycle with the CRD, even across clouds and across Kubernetes clusters. So
I could have like one vCluster in my Amazon, and then I could manage resources off in Google or off in Azure.
Yeah, pretty much.
Multicloud's a special place in my heart. That's the kind of products I'm working on right now. So
got it. Yeah, we should definitely have a chat about this. Actually.
Yeah. Are you seeing customers deploying in a multi-cloud more frequently in recent times?
Yeah, a lot of the Fortune 500 companies we talk to, they have part private cloud and part public cloud. Sometimes it's one particular public cloud.
Right.
Sometimes it's even multiple. And for them, having vCluster in a way, almost like an abstraction layer on top, is a big benefit for them, right? Because they're abstracting the experience for Kubernetes, because there are subtle differences between cloud providers.
But you can kind of level that out a little bit across the clouds.
Exactly, yeah.
That's cool.
And I think for us, it allows you to do crazy things as well. I mean, you could run like
I like crazy things.
Like, for example, if you're thinking about our EKS-based vClusters, you can run them in Google Cloud now.
What? You run an EKS-style vCluster on GKE?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. So you have like flavors inside of the vCluster that maybe match the clouds?
Yeah. We have the distros, right? We support different distros under the hood. So the API server, controller manager, those are standard distro components that we take from these open source projects, right? And EKS has an open source distro that we can leverage for this, just like K0s, K3s, vanilla Kubernetes, right? And then we swap out. We don't deploy. Essentially, we don't deploy the entire control plane, right? We only deploy parts of it, and then we swap out other parts to essentially make the virtual cluster, virtual, right?
Right.
But the API server, for example, comes straight up from the distro that you're using.
Really cool. Really cool.